Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Rhody Rumble podcast. Today I'm joined by color analyst of the Brown University Bears Athletics, co-host of sports radio talk show Cordischi and Coit, my former boss, sports director, sports anchor of ABC6 in Providence, maybe most importantly, professor of sports broadcasting at URI, Nick Coit. Thank you so much for taking the time, Nick. How are you today?
I'm great, Adam. How are you?
Doing well. Just trying to stay warm, like we're talking about.
Like all of us right now.
100%, 100%. Well, first off, I just want to congratulate you. I already congratulated you, but I just want to formally congratulate you in person, or at least over Zoom, on receiving the 2022 Rhode Island Sportscaster of the Year award. This is your fourth time winning the award. How does it feel to be recognized in that way?
It's great. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful pat on the back, and I always say that really it's a team honor, and I mean it because I wouldn't be able to do what I get to do without Ian Steele, my partner, who is the best partner in the business. He's a workhorse. He works his tail off, and the combination of the two of us, I think, it makes for a really great team. And we so enjoy what we get to do, and we work our tails off at it. So I give a tip of the hat to him and all the great work that he does, because I think it allows us to shine. So thank you again. It's a really great honor.
Yeah, of course. I obviously have been around the department all of last semester, so just watching you guys and the chemistry that both of you have, I mean, it really is remarkable. It's really nice to see during like shows like Pick Six, and so just even just shows on weeknights, how well you guys feed off of one another, and you can tell that you've been doing it for a while, and it's one of those awards that obviously your name is on it, but I can definitely see what you're saying. It belongs to the station, it belongs to the department itself, the little office. So I'm sure it's definitely nice to have back in your possession.
And the great interns that help us out and set us up for success. So you guys get a piece of it too, Adam. So we appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Well, I want to jump into a little bit about your path on how you got to the position that you're in right now. A question that I love to ask, with all the people I do this with, is just, what is your why, or what motivates you?
Ooh, what is my why? I guess it's just the passion that I have for sports. The passion that's grown that I have for sports broadcasting. I I can tell the story of how I realized the passion. It's always a fun one. When I was in high school, this was 2004, I was a junior, and my big things in high school were I did a lot of theater. I was in a lot of shows, a lot of musicals, whatnot, drama club. I also played golf and baseball. Those were my two sports in high school. And so I had a passion for sports. And my junior year was around the time the movie Dodgeball came out. And so it was very popular at the time. And I had a group of friends that were running a charity organization at the high school, and they wanted to do a charity dodgeball tournament. And so they came to me and another friend of mine and said, well, if we're going to do this tournament, we want to have the guys from ESPN 8 The Ocho from the movie, somebody like kind of play that role. And so we'd love for you to do it. And I said, well, that would be really fun. It'd be really awesome. And so they gave us a couple microphones, and we're doing like post-match interviews and whatnot, and everybody can hear us in the gym. And we just had a lot of fun with it. And the next day in school, I had 3 separate teachers come up to me and say, hey, you were really good at that. You should consider that for a career. And the light bulb went off. It was like, how do I take my passion for sports and put it together with my passion for performance? And came up with sports broadcasting. But it was the charity dodgeball tournament my junior year at Plymouth North High School that helped me realize that, hey, this is something I should pursue, because I think it'd be pretty good at it. And the rest is history.
Yeah, it makes you think. It makes you kind of scratch your head. Like, if you never participated in something like that, if the event didn't even take place, would you have wanted to, take this on as a career, or even thought about it? I mean, I want to get into a little bit about where you're from. You're originally from Plymouth, Mass. So can you just talk a little bit about growing up there? Like you said, you played baseball and golf. So, how did you immerse yourself into the sports world as an athlete? I know you said you participated in other after school curriculars as well.
Yeah, no, there used to be an athlete in here, believe it or not. Plymouth was a big baseball town, and so that's really where the passion was born from. My dad was played semi-pro baseball, and grew up playing baseball, and so it was a burning passion. And in this region too, 20 years ago, this region wasn't as football craved, I think, as it is now. This region was all about that sport and the Red Sox and breaking the curse of the Bambino and that pursuit. And so that, I think, really was the dominant sport in the region. And so that's why I grew up playing it. That's how I got the passion for it. The first team I loved was the Boston Red Sox. Fell in love with them at a young age. And so that's sort of where that passion was driven from. And, the fact that they break the curse when I'm in high school is, obviously one of the great memories of my lifetime, not just my sports fandom. And so that's sort of where it was born from. And I grew up playing golf too. My grandfather was a big golfer and, very passionate about it. Ironically, when I was young, one of his favorite golfers, or a guy that he talked about a lot, was Brad Faxon, a guy who is from Rhode Island and a guy that I've interviewed and gotten to know a little bit. So that's kind of been cool. And so, yeah, those are sort of the grassroots of where, my passion came from when it came to sports, but definitely growing up in Plymouth, it was a baseball area, baseball town. And that's what things were born from.
When you were playing these sports like baseball and golf, did it ever cross your mind that you might be still within the sports industry or within this business, but not as an athlete, maybe on the other side? Or did it really take for that charity event to kind of have that aha moment?
That was probably the aha moment. Yeah, the light bulb definitely went off. But I realized I think fairly quickly that I loved the game of baseball, but I wasn't great at it. I had a couple good seasons here and there, whatever, growing up playing youth, but like it was by the time I was in high school, I knew that like I'm not going to the major leagues, whatnot. But I realized probably in middle school that, hey, I'm pretty good when it comes to performance and doing theater. The first role I ever got in a musical was I was Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls, which if you see the old movie, that is the role that Frank Sinatra plays.
Right.
And so this was sixth grade. So that was when I realized like, ooh, I'm pretty good at this. And I grew up and I was in band, I played saxophone, that sort of thing. So and I was a drum major in high school. So like that thing was definitely, that aspect of it was like, ooh, that's where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna end up being in some sort of communications or theater or something along those lines. But when I realized, it's funny, I think my mom wanted me to be a meteorologist. She sort of saw that because of the personality. I just didn't have that burning passion for weather. I don't know. It just wasn't there, but the burning passion for sports was there.
Right.
And so once I realized that, I went full go, and that's why I applied to all the schools I did, and Emerson College ended up being the place that I landed.
Yeah. So I just thought of so the drama that you took part in, when you were in elementary school into middle school, would you say that prepared you for, 6 o'clock shows, 11 o'clock shows that you have to do when you're about to go on the air live?
Yeah, it's different. It's different. You're not in front of an audience. You're in front of a camera with a red light. And so it's a little different as to what you're doing. But I think the concept of, communicating is the same. And I'm not playing a role. That's been the interesting thing, is like with theater, you're playing a role, you're being somebody different. With doing the 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock shows, you're playing the role of yourself.
Yep.
Maybe you just turn the dial up just a little bit, but the thing I always, tell students now too, is that you want to be as close to yourself as possible. And so maybe it's me projecting a little more or whatever, but like when I'm on the air, I try to make it so that, yes, I'm, being a good communicator, but I'm also being myself. And so, I probably wouldn't talk as loudly in everyday conversation as I do on the air and projecting and whatnot and enunciating. But I try to have that flavor of personality of myself, through my writing and the way that I present myself.
Yeah, for sure. So moving along, like you had alluded to before, you attended Emerson College, so you stayed local in Boston, where you did have the opportunity to play baseball, also pursuing a degree in broadcast journalism. So what do you think was the biggest thing that you learned, during that time that has now helped you professionally and later on in your career?
Um, from Emerson, I learned a lot at the school. It really, it's a wonderful place. I just had the opportunity earlier this week to visit, and the campus is transformed, and it's been great to see. But the thing that really helps is that they have you hit the ground running right away. They they want you to get involved in all the student organizations and get involved with internships and get involved with and use the city to your advantage, the city of Boston, which is just so accessible. There's so many things. And of course, if you're pursuing sports broadcasting, I mean, the teams have been so successful. They were successful when I was there. This was 2007 to 2011. So Red Sox won a World Series. Celtics won an NBA title. The Bruins won the Stanley Cup. The Patriots are going to Super Bowls. Like there was a lot going on. And so they encourage you to use the city to your advantage. It's right there. And they prepare you well with the classes and the instruction. It was very real, that you knew what to expect. And the great thing now about being around the Harrington School at URI is I see some of the flavor of that. I really do. I'm not blowing smoke here. I see it because there's great kids that really want to pursue this. They have a passion for it and they want to learn all these things. And I try to bring that realness when I'm teaching in the classroom now. I try not to, I bring my passion, and there are days where I'm like, God, I love this. This is great, whatever. But I give them the real talk of it, like, hey, you may not be a millionaire if you're going into sports media, sports broadcasting, unless you're like Tony Romo or Tom Brady as he steps into the booth here.
Yeah.
But I try to be real with them and say, like, look, you're getting to do something that's pretty cool for a living, and that's the trade-off. And so that's something I think Emerson kind of ingrained in me was you know the realness to it, and just all the little things too, like being able to produce for yourself, being able to pick up a camera, being able to do all those things. The school really helped in preparing me for that, and so I'm very appreciative of it. And I had a lot of great friends at the time that are now in the industry as well, and I think we pushed each other to be as prepared as possible getting into the real world.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you telling me a story last semester where one of your professors was hosting a coaches show or something like that. Really stuck with me in Providence, and you got the opportunity to go with the class to the show and watch that. And I feel like going to press conferences, like going to the Ryan Center after a game, or getting out of the classroom, I feel like that's just the best way to learn and really getting that hands-on experience, which you definitely talked about there.
Yeah, well, I think that's the great opportunity you have at a state's university that has Division I athletics, is that you can really get involved there. And we did our best at Emerson to do that with our Division III teams. But I also balanced being an athlete at times too, and getting involved. And so, maybe it was a little more difficult, but getting the Division I experience that you guys get, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And the story was, it was John Rook, who's the voice of the Providence College Friars. He was our professor of sports reporting class my junior year, and he had to do the coaches show at the Abbey in Providence, which is right near the Providence College campus. And so we got in a few cars. We went down there. It was the Keno Davis coaches show, and we got to ask Coach Davis a couple of things. The Keno's now, I think it's Central Michigan, I think. His time at Providence was fairly short. Didn't work out, but it's worked out for him, I think, in his next gig here. If he's still coaching there, I'll have to double check that. But it was a little bit better. But it was cool. It was cool, the experience, and getting to go down there, and you sort of got that flavor. I did end up covering a game for a class too. I think this was a sports reporting class. Marshawn Brooks was playing at Providence at the time and scoring buckets after buckets. So I got a taste of it back then. Not like it is now. Now it's
Right.
really the program has it's soared. It really has. So,
Oh yeah.
but it was cool kind of coming back here, and I'm like, I remember covering that game, whatever, thinking back. I was a pup. Now I'm there all the time.
Pretty cool. So following college, I saw that you worked at Boston 25. You also spoke to me about that as well, as a sports producer. So just learning a little bit more of the back end, how the business operates. And during the time, the Boston Bruins were also making their championship run for the first time in a while in 2011. So obviously working in, New England, there's been a lot of championships that you've been around, but what made that experience so special as it was, one of your first opportunities as a professional?
It just the people that I got to meet, and the mentors that I had when I was at Boston 25. It really, that 8-9 months set me up for the rest of my career and the success, because I got to learn the little things and all the things behind the scenes that make for great television before I even popped up on the air. It was very, very beneficial. I got to see what it looks like in the big leagues, which was cool, because Boston is the big leagues when it comes to television news. They're a top 10 market. And so I got to see what it's like to make real good television on the fly. I'll never forget. I was producing the night that Theo Epstein resigned from the Red Sox, and it was 10 o'clock when it happened, and I had to rework the entire newscast, and we had to break in with breaking news, and I had to write all the scripts and cut video, and I'm just flying, helping the anchors, and they were so encouraging at the time. I got to work with Maria Stefanos, who is one of the great anchors in Boston. She's now at WCVB. She's just such a class act, and she's so good at what she does. So being around her was great. Mark Ockerblum, who is the lead anchor now, nightside anchor at Boston 25. He is a tremendous mentor. I would produce sportscasts for him. He's a former sports guy, but transitioned over to news. I would hand scripts to him every night, and he would help me out in terms of, hey, this is what you should do with your writing next time, this, that, the other thing, and was always encouraging and really helped me. And then on the weekends, I used to work with a guy named Adam Pellerin, who's at Nesson now. You'll see him time to time doing Red Sox coverage and hockey coverage and whatnot. He was actually a news reporter there at the time, but he was weekend anchoring. And I'll never forget, Adam would call me at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. I'd produce the sportscast. He'd go through my scripts, and he would actually go over all my writing with me and say, like, hey, I love this. Hey, here's what you should insert here. What did you miss here? I'll go with this, whatever. And it was just very, very helpful, very constructive, and really, really set me up. And it was him and Shannon Malaire, who ended up going to NBC 10 Boston. She was anchoring the weekends there too. And, she was a big soccer fan, actually. So she liked doing sports. And I actually would produce the sportscast on the weekends for them to like double anchor it. They would both do news, but then they would both do the sportscast. So it was actually pretty cool. But she was very, very encouraging and helpful too. So, and all the great producers there, and people that work the assignment desk and all the photographers. A guy named Walt McGraw has been there years and years. He's just he used to introduce me to everybody when we be out in the field, and Jeff Robinson the same. Like, I could go on and on, but there were so many great people, and that 8-9 months really pushed me. It helped me build a resume tape and a reel, obviously, to get my first on-air job. But the encouragement that I got, the mentorship, I'll never forget it. I always have a special place for those guys.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive when you talk about some of the work that you had to do in just such a short time. And when you think about one newscast as well, it's live, and it's only about 25 to 30 minutes as well. And you're doing so much behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get to see. Obviously, they don't see it on the air. So for me, when I was in there last semester, kind of just watching some of the things that they would do when you guys were on the air, it's just really impressive. And I feel like that definitely sets you up to be a better broadcaster when you get the opportunity to get that on-air opportunity, or experience, I should say. But yeah, I mean, it really is impressive what they do, and I feel like they don't get enough credit as they deserve.
No, and everybody's got to be versatile in a newsroom now. Everybody's got to know what everybody else needs to do. Sometimes they have to pick up, a different role. They have to do different things.
Right.
So versatility is key when it comes to working in TV news now, because if you understand all those roles and what goes into it, I think it sets everybody else up for success, because you can do different things, and you can be, as helpful as possible when it comes to putting everything together. You know, you saw how the sausage is made. Everybody's got to learn how to make the sausage in order for everybody to, be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say during that time as a producer, you always still had that burning passion to get on air and be an anchor or reporter, or did you want to stick with producing? Because obviously your next roles, you made the transition from being a producer to on air.
Yeah, the goal was always to be on air. And taking the producer role was sort of my foot in the door, if you will, because they offered it to me. Basically, how it happened was I interned the spring of my senior year at Emerson there. And, I built a good relationship with the sports producer, a guy named Jay Bramble, who was there at the time, and the sports anchor, a guy named Ryan Asalta, who ended up moving on to, I think he was at Fox 5 in New York for a little while. He's Sports Illustrated. And, I got to learn from them. And then that May, Ryan was about to, take the next step in his career. And Jay's family, they were actually expecting, his wife was expecting their first child. And so they needed the help, and they liked me enough as an intern where they said, hey, we're going to need some help here. The Celtics were in the playoffs at the time. The Bruins, we didn't know it, but they were about to go on that Stanley Cup run. And so that means a lot of coverage and a lot of things put into it. And so, he came to me, Jay said to me, hey, we're going to need the help. If you'd be willing to come help us, we'll hire you on as a freelance producer, and we'll use you. And I said, all right, great. So that Monday, whatever it was, first Monday in May, I graduated from Emerson. And that Tuesday, I was walking into the building at Boston 25 and getting my ID badge and get everything set up for me to be an employee there. And a month later, the Bruins won the Stanley Cup. We're doing all the coverage and the parade stuff and all of that. And I'll never forget the night that they won. I'm just cutting video left and right. We're getting a feed from the locker room. And so I'm producing all that stuff. And yeah, it was pretty fun. But the goal was, after that, to get on the air and build a tape. And at the time I would go out different times. There'd be different stories where, because they needed the help, I'd go out with Walt McGraw, sports photographer, or Jeff Robinson or other sports photographer. And, they'd have a story. Like one night, it was a draft night, and Vince Wilfork was playing for the Patriots at the time. He was hosting a draft party. And so the opportunity was there to talk to Vince and do an interview. So I got myself a one-on-one interview with Vince, which was really cool, great experience. And also, as I'm going along here, I'm building up my tape. And so when I'm applying for my first on-air jobs, I've got a tape where, oh, look, there's that one-on-one with Vince Wilfork. Like, wow, how'd this kid get that? This looks pretty good. And there was a time where I actually got to interview Doc Rivers one-on-one right before the Celtics draft. And that was on my tape. And that was great experience. And I got to meet him. And so little by little, I would go out and these stories, take these opportunities while I was doing the job producing. And by November, December that year, I got my first on-air job in Bangor, Maine, and got on the air.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool, kickstart to your career. Do you still have that footage, by the way, from those interviews?
Yep, I got it. I got the reel somewhere. Yep.
Awesome. I'd love to see that sometime. That's
I'll show
cool.
you.
Yeah. So your next opportunity, as you mentioned, working for WABI TV5 in Bangor, Maine. What was that like? Just do you have any stories or memorable moments, that come to mind from that time?
It was a wonderful 2 years. We're talking before the weekend of the Arctic chill here in southern New England, and so it kind of reminds me of that time with how cold it was up there. But WABI, the top station in the Bangor market, a lot of longtime veterans that are up there working for the station. It's a tradition up there, and so walking into that building, you realize that right away. And the great thing is, though, that all those veterans and that tradition, it propels you to success, and it helps you sort of build off of, what you learn along the way, and it builds you up to get to the steps where you want to go in your career. And so it was great for me because I got to learn from a guy named Tim Throckmorton, who was the sports director there for 30 plus years. Still a very, very good friend of mine. And he really pushed me. He pushed me to get out in the field, get the camera, do all that stuff, do all the stuff that I kind of learned behind the scenes, but now I'm doing it as an on-air reporter. And so I'm shooting my own stand-ups, putting together my own packages while also producing a show and doing all those things. And I really cut my teeth there, and it was great. And it felt like grad school at times, which was cool because not only were there longtime veterans, but there were a lot of young people that the station hires because it is a smaller market, and they bring in young up and comers like myself, and you build a bond with those people. And they're still some of my closest dear friends in the business. I have friends now. My buddy Terry Stackhouse is an anchor in Portland, Maine. My friends Caitlin and Taylor work at NBC Connecticut, and they do great work there. My dear friend Jackie is an anchor in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My friend Rob, I was just texting with him about, maybe an upcoming trip, something like that. He's actually working. He's a meteorologist, and he works at Penn State, where he graduated from now. I could go on and on about the great people that I worked with up there, that I learned from, that I learned with. And you build a bond, and you get through those times. And, with the on-air job, you make your mistakes and you get them out. And the great thing about the Bangor market and that Maine area, I loved the people up there because they realize what that market is, and they see a lot of young people, and sometimes they build a bond with them after 2 years, and they're like, oh man, I hate to see you leave. But it's like, well, they understand where you're going with your career and what your aspirations are. And I still talk to some of the people up there. I made a great bond. I was only there for 2 years, but it felt like a lot longer. And I got to cover a lot of Maine athletics up there, high school athletics, which really gets you to the grassroots of doing local sports TV, and what it means to people. You really learn that at a small market job. And so, yeah, I can't say enough good things about my experience up there with WABI. It was a wonderful station, and Eastern and Central Maine is a wonderful place.
Yeah. I was talking with Coach Tammy Reese about sort of her path and her journey, obviously, to where she is now as the head coach of the program. And she was telling me a lot about making sacrifices. And, that really goes with whether you're a coach or maybe an athlete, or obviously being in media, just really in the sports industry in general. But was that a smooth transition for you? Were you excited to take that job and make a sacrifice to, go to a place that you may not have been all that much and kind of leave home for a while?
Well, that kind of goes back to the real talk that I try to have with, some of the students in the Harrington School, is that the reality is at times you're going to have to make sacrifices with a job like this. It's sports broadcasting is not 9 to 5. And that's the first thing that I think people realize that they do right away, but something that I try to, tell my students and tell young people getting into the business. You're going to have to sacrifice. There's going to be times you're going to have to work holidays. You're going to have to work around them. You're going to have to work through them. You name it. And you're going to have to, at times, maybe move to a place you never thought you would move to. I got lucky. I stayed in New England. I haven't left New England, and that's really lucky. And I'm fortunate. Ian, my partner, Ian Steele, ended up moving to Corpus Christi, Texas. I mean, he moved his life, far, far away, and ended up coming back here, which was great. But that's a sacrifice. You're sacrificing time with family, being close to family, being close to friends. I'm fortunate now. I have some close friends that are living in the area now, which is great. And I feel like I'm catching up on some of the time that I missed when I was 23, 24, 25, and they were still living in the city of Boston or near the city of Boston. And meanwhile, I picked up my life and moved to Bangor, Maine, and I was,
Right.
a little ways away. So that sacrifice comes in, but it's the reality of it. And my friends and my family realized what I was going after and what I continue to go after with this job. It's a big career move, and luckily for me, it's paid off. I've got a great setup here now. I've got a great day job. I've got a lot of great things that I do, besides the day job at Channel 6, and part of it was a sacrifice that I made. But again, when I was in a small market, I was with other people that were making that kind of sacrifice. And so, that's how we bonded, is the fact that, yeah, we're
Right.
trying to get to the same place, trying to go on that upward trajectory. And, if it means staying in from the bars when you're a young person and, splitting a 30 rack, TMI, and saving money that way on a Friday, Saturday night and having fun that way, that's the way we did it, and we got through those times, and, we had a good time with it. So, you make those sacrifices, but if it gets you to where you want to go, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's certainly paid off for you as we look at where you are now. And that takes us to February of 2014, where you started on Orange Street in Providence. You started under legendary sports reporter, anchor, director of the station, Ken Bell. I've heard many stories about him. Haven't had the opportunity to meet him yet, but I hope eventually I can. What is something that he has taught you, just from working with him and, ultimately made you a better journalist from the time you had with him?
The passion and the drive, I think were something that really rubbed off on me from Ken. And he's the nicest man you'll ever meet. He was another tremendous mentor. I've been lucky with both Tim and Ken. I had two 30-plus year veterans in the business teaching me. So a lot of times you're a product of your environment, and I think it's a tribute to both of them. With Ken, I think one thing he always tried to instill in me was, I just talked about a lot of sacrifice that you make with this job, but something that he always tried to preach to me was, you want to make sacrifice, but you also want to find the balance, because family and your life is important too, outside of the business. And he was always big on that. And that stuck with me. And he's a guy that's got kids, grandkids now, those sorts of things. That's what he retired into. And so he was very well prepared for retirement when it happened. But that's one thing that he really instilled in me. And just the way that you handle yourself on the air too. The professionalism that he always carried himself with, I think rubbed off on me too. And something that he said to me before I took on his role as a sports director. He's like, hey, look, you can have fun with the job and you can show your personality, whatever, but remember, you're a reflection of the station. You are your reflection of your own brand, and so make sure you carry yourself with the utmost professionalism, integrity that you can. And that always stuck with me because that was something that he did so well. And so I learned a lot of great things from Ken, and just the little nuances of television, what works, what makes what engages viewers, those sorts of things. He was very in tune with that because he did it for so long, since the early 80s, late 70s. Like he knew a lot. So I'm very appreciative of my time with Ken Bell. We had a lot of fun, covered a few Super Bowls together, and saw a lot of great wins, great moments, and we still talk all the time. So it's great to have a great friend now like Ken.
Yeah, to have a friend or a mentor like that. I mean, I can't imagine how much support you've gotten, how much you've learned from him, that you've taken with you over the last few years. So that's definitely remarkable. Again, I hope I have the chance to talk to him at some point or meet him at some point, if that ever comes up. But sticking on Channel 6, you mentioned it, you've had the opportunity to work alongside Ian Steele, and together you've also covered many championships between Super Bowls, a World Series, Celtics and Bruins playoff runs, and of course a couple of NCAA tournaments sprinkled out over the last couple of years. So, what has been the most rewarding or the best part about your role at ABC6 in the sports director role?
I think I've grown up a lot, Adam. I think I've really had to grow up a lot, because again, it's one of those, you're the accountable one when it comes to your sports product, your department, everything that you're representing. I think it's helped me grow up. There's a lot of administrative things that come up when you're the sports director, you're running the department. It was funny. I was talking with Jeff Marcone, who is the head football coach, state championship football coach this fall at LaSalle Academy. The other night, I was at the LaSalle basketball game, and I was talking to him about, his job as a football coach, and he said, I'm sure you're still busy, and, talking to kids, getting them ready for the season. And he's like, yeah, we sometimes it's even busier than the season. And I'm like, it's funny. The percentage of the time that like you do the job of like being on the air and presenting a sportscast, it's like a small percentage compared to like everything else that you do with a job,
Right.
like news gathering and going to games and editing and producing and all that stuff. Like 3 minutes and 30 seconds is such a small percentage. And
Yep.
I just kind of think about that because with the sports director role, there's just a lot of things that you have to, worry about, plan ahead with. But again, when I have somebody like Ian as a partner and, work in the department with me, it's easy because we are in sync, we work together on these things. But again, it's the accountability, and you are the face, when it comes to the sports coverage. That's something that's, struck me as something that I've learned, like, okay, I need to, carry myself the way that I need to carry myself with the professionalism. And you take some of the bullets too. If something goes wrong, that sort of thing, you have to be accountable for that. If somebody's interested in coverage for this, coverage for that, you have to plan with that. You're not going to please everybody in whatever leadership role you ever have, but you do your best. And that's always what I try to do. So, yeah, it's been different, but I've grown up a lot in this role. I really have, because I've had to be an adult as much as possible. So, yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point just in that last answer about the preparation that goes in for one broadcaster for that 3 minute, take or segment, whatever it may be. I mean, I can remember last semester just going to, some games, Gillette Stadium, for example, and being there. The game ended at 4 o'clock and not leaving till 9:30 and having to prepare for the 11 o'clock news. So just the preparation that goes in, another, that's a big percentage, but another thing that the outside world does not see, that people do not see about the job. They only see, the on air, that experience, the talent, so to speak. So I definitely think, like, from the experiences that you've had and from working with Ian and Ken, you've been able to learn a little bit more about, what it really takes to do the job. And I think you bring up another good point about being the sports director, about handling more on the business side of the department and having to kind of be that liaison between, obviously the reporters and the department itself and the rest of the station. So I think, again, there's a lot more credit that you probably don't get, but it's a lot more to the job than just going on and whenever we're live kind of thing. So I think it's definitely impressive to see and to hear about as well.
Plan ahead. That's the biggest thing. Plan ahead, and that'll set you up for success, hopefully, or as much as possible, because plans sometimes blow up too. So be versatile.
Absolutely. And also just going on the fly too. I mean, there were times last semester where, things may not have gone the way that we had anticipated, but you guys were able to think on the fly and still make it, so we were able to get through the broadcast. And a lot of times, externally, I would go back and watch some of the shows and, you couldn't really tell. I mean, I knew if something happened because I was there, I was in the control room, or I was in the station, in the office when it happened, or when we were preparing for it to happen. I mean, I remember on pick six sometimes when we didn't have the final score of the game until we were on air, and you'd be like, text me what the final score is. So just different, scrambling to get different information and different stats and everything together, and then being prepared to go live at the time that you're supposed to go live. I mean, again, it's definitely impressive what you guys do.
Got to do what you got to do. Oh God, those final score nights. I'm like, oh man.
I just remember me and Pete being like, all right, they posted it. Let's text them. And like, I was like, I hope he didn't get past that score, those highlights already, because we just got in. We cut it pretty close sometimes. I remember times when I didn't know how to use the printer as well, and I had to run out there right before you guys would go on with all the pages in different order. I don't know how I messed that up so many times, but hopefully it's made me better, and I've learned a lot from that as well, and those mistakes. So yeah,
not mistakes. You just no, that's just being things that happen. It's live TV. You never know what's going to happen, so you got to be prepared.
Exactly.
On your toes.
Yeah, definitely a great lesson I learned from both you and Ian. So I have two more questions from you. From working with you, again, I've heard a lot of different stories. Again, some of the late nights in the studio for Pick Six, road trips to Buffalo or LA for the World Series. Do you have a favorite story or stories that come to mind just from your time at Channel 6?
I mean, the Super Bowls are tough to top, obviously, and seeing the Patriots win. You mentioned the Red Sox winning the World Series. That was pretty cool, as much as I talked about my love for the Sox. Being on the field when they win the World Series, and being right there as Mookie Betts is standing in front of me, Xander Bogaerts is standing in front of me, like doing all that. It's those nights are such a blur when they happen. But I love those nights, but I also really enjoy some of the local teams when they have success. And one of my other favorite nights on the job was when this was 2015, and the Friars hockey team won the national championship, beat BU and Jack Eichel at TD Garden. It was an incredible game, a 4-3 win. And, they got to celebrate on the ice in Boston, and I'm running around doing interviews, and I had been following these guys, covering the team, gotten to know them a little bit. And it was just an incredible story. The local team would win a national championship like that. And the fact that, I got to do, such great interviews and coverage and whatnot right there after it happened. It was a very memorable experience because you felt like you had seen the story through the whole way. And I love that. And those are some of the great things that you get to do with a local sports job is these athletes that you see from the ground level or, from high school or youth on. On that particular team, we had a guy like Nola Chari who had gone to Hendricken and he went to PC, wins the national championship with them, ends up playing for the Boston Bruins. That was half the devastation of the Bruins losing the cup in 2019 was the fact that Nola Chari was on the team. He was on the fourth line. And so if he wins, that's a great local story. Here we are at TD Garden where Chari won his college national championship. He's a kid from Rhode Island. He played for the Providence Bruins too. Like it would have been awesome. I just had the idea in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I got to know Noel a little bit. And he's a great, great guy. Comes from a great family in Johnston. And I was thinking in my head, like they win the cup, like he's going to have a day with the cup. And so I'm like, that's going to be awesome. He's probably going to go around Rhode Island with the Stanley Cup and all that. And didn't end up happening, but just a great guy to cover and follow. And so he was part of that team. And, when I say those grassroots stories, I always think of a guy like a Quiddy who came from Providence, played at Hendricken, was a beast for the Hawks, scored 5 touchdowns, I think, in the state championship game. You were around this past fall when Quiddy comes back. He was a first round pick of the Colts. His family sitting in the front row. He interviewed his family and then going into the locker room afterwards and getting to talk to Quiddy. That's pretty cool that you follow it and you walk in there and he knows who everybody is. When we walk in, he's like, oh, here comes Rhode Island. Because we've been following him since he was a kid.
Yep.
And it's those stories are really, really cool and, rewarding moments with the job because you're seeing the story through. So, those I enjoy very, very much, and there's quite a few of them too. There's more and more of them coming from Rhode Island, which is awesome. But those are the times I really enjoy.
I think of most recently Jeremy Pena in the World Series, the classical
Bingo.
high school alum, obviously, and then winning the MVP. And I don't know, I don't think he won Rookie of the Year, but still, which is a remarkable run for him. I mean, it's definitely some of the stories you brought up. It's definitely some of the perks of the job. And I kind of got a little bit of a taste of that last semester. Because, I feel like when I signed off on the internship, I was definitely excited to be around some of the professional teams. Obviously, the Patriots, I got to do a press conference for the Red Sox. And I didn't even grow up rooting for those teams. As a matter of fact, I grew up hating on those teams, I should say. But just kind of having those moments where you walk away and you have goosebumps and you're like, where am I right now? But I think my appreciation for local sports and high school sports, I think it definitely grew. And I think I definitely appreciate, those little stories. And I love storytelling. It's part of the reason why I want to get into this industry. It's part of the reason why I like doing this too. And, getting different people on, whether it's media, athletes, or coaches and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to hear some of those stories that I didn't know about just local athletes and some of the success that they've had, at the local level, obviously at high school, collegiate level, and then on to potentially professional level as well. So definitely cool. I mean, you have to love storytelling if you're going to be in this industry.
Bingo. Yeah.
For sure. So I have one more question for you. As of last semester, you started on campus here as a professor, as we talked about, of sports broadcasting at URI. And you get to teach and, mentor students like myself again to, get their foot in the door and get into this industry. What is the best advice? And you've given a lot, during this interview, but what is the best advice you can give a student or someone, again, like myself, looking to take on a similar path as you?
Try everything when you're in school. Definitely try everything. You never know what you might come across that you really, really enjoy. Maybe you think you want to be in front of the camera and you pick up a camera and you're like, this is really cool. I like shooting and I like being a photographer, or, I want to be on air, but, oh man, I think I'm really good at this producing thing. I could be a, producer at a big time station or something like that. Or maybe I thought I wanted to be on TV, but I really like radio, or I really like podcasting, or those sorts of things. So that's what I try to do with the sports broadcasting class, is that I try to have everybody try everything and see what they like, see what sticks. And So that's my best advice, and get involved. There's plenty of things to get involved on with campus, on campus, and with, WRIU, and, all the opportunities that the Harrington School, provides. Again, it reminds me of my time at Emerson and just doing all the shows that we did, and, working for Emerson Independent Video and WEBN and WERS, the FM station, and all those things. That's how I kind of figured out, hey, I think I want to get in the television route, but I could do a lot of different things, and luckily I've been able to kind of keep my hat in each one of them. But you may find something if you're a young person that you didn't think you liked, but maybe you do like, or maybe you have a passion for. So try everything and get reps as much as possible, and meet people. Don't be afraid to reach out to somebody in the business, because you'll find, most times people that are in the business, they are very, very encouraging, and they want to help the next wave of people coming in. I find there are a lot of really good people in the business, and that's a great thing. It's a great network, and networking's key. It's about who you know. It really is. And the more that you build up those connections, the more that the chance is you're gonna find your foot in the door, and start down the path that you want to start down in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, thank you again so much for everything you've done for me, and of course for taking the time again today. Definitely stay in touch. I'll see you around at some games and press conferences and whatever, but I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Pleasure, Adam. Thank you, buddy.